Hey, welcome to another episode on the People Productivity Channel, where we interview very interesting people who have tips and techniques to share with you so you can become the best you possible. Today, I have on a very interesting guest. Yes, another interesting guest, Jim Knight. Jim actually did what few people achieve. He became a CIO in a Fortune 250 company. That is a real accomplishment. 250 of those jobs available in America. Jim got one of them. He became an incredibly good leader. He has taught leadership. And today you're going to learn a lot about leadership, the importance of leadership, and most importantly, how leadership is actually really going to change and reinvent itself as we come into this digital economy that is emerging around us. So Jim, hey, could you just share a little bit about yourself with the audience?
Sure. Thanks, Frank. Yeah, so I've been in IT my whole life. I went to college for both bachelor's and master's in computer science and MIS. During college, started my IT career. Always wanted to be an IT guy. I'm approaching my 39th year, believe it or not, and I've been mainly in the property insurance world, some pharmaceutical. I finished my corporate career about 4 years ago as the global CIO of Chubb Insurance Company. I was there for 20 years. And they got acquired, and it was a perfect time for me to go out on my own. And I did some IT consulting, but then I also realized and had a passion for helping others develop their leadership skills and become better at what they do, especially in IT, but beyond IT also. And so I got certified as a leadership coach and an empowerment coach in general, life coach, if you want to call it that, and have a number of designations in terms of assessment tools and so on and so forth. And now I do IT consulting and coaching to help mainly IT, but not only leaders really become the best they could be. Because at the end of the day, I believe everything's about leadership.
You know, leadership is absolutely what drives. It's the engine that is driving these companies. And even though we see the number of layers of leadership shrinking over time, and we're going to get flatter org structures in this digital economy where people are more fully empowered, at the end of the day, setting direction, motivating the people, inspiring people about the mission, making sure the roadblocks are moved. This is super important. And what I love about this interview, honestly, is that you worked your way up through technology
Right.
leadership. And you now read in all of these different prognostications that in some way, every company is going to be a tech company.
Mm-hmm.
And if every company is going to be a tech company where teams of people have to come together to turn concepts or ideas into reality, that creative process to build something, this group craftsmanship that we saw in IT ourselves, is the kind of the methodology of leadership and the tools, techniques, and things that everybody is going to have to adopt. And
Mm-hmm.
that the methods that you applied to create success will be used by others. So, tell us a little bit about that leadership journey. What happened along the way? How did you get into it, and what happened?
Yeah, like I said, since I was a kid, believe it or not, I had my first real job when I was 10 years old. My dad owned a microfilming service in New York, and I was his delivery guy. And
Yeah.
every now and then, he would let me run the computer that did the microfilming. So I was somewhat intrigued. 11th grade, took computer math, basic programming to solve math problems, fell in love,
Hmm.
and I took it from there. I went to college for it, and started out as a junior programmer in a small 3-person shop, local supermarket chain upstate New York,
Wow.
and moved on into an insurance company up there. That's where I started to really build some, let's say, IT and management muscle too. And then had the yearning to come back to New York City. I'm a Brooklyn native. Ended up at another insurance company where I went from developer, I did some BA work, business analysis work, but then got into project management and loved it.
Mm.
I was a sucker for a challenge, but it also hit me that I kind of noticed before that, but project management, I guess, gave me the outlet. It's all about results, right?
Yeah.
If you want to really make a difference, get results, make it happen, right? And I really honed my project management skills. I loved the idea of that challenge. I became pretty good at it. That through my career, many times I've been given a runaway project to fix, or the ones that
Okay.
others just couldn't get done. Got through that, But as in project management, especially is when I first learned about, it's about the people, right? You could have, when you look at projects, you look at the resources you have. The biggest resource, and the toughest one to really deal with are the people resources. Toughest meaning there's different personalities,
Yeah.
and you really need to line them up. And to your point, as I progressed through my career, companies start to realize, and Chubb is a great example. I know two leaders that said to me, I'm a technology company doing underwriting, or I'm a technology company doing claims, depending
Which
on what
is
department it was.
progressive thinking.
Exactly. And that was
That's
Chubb.
really progressive thinking
That was Chubb.
in
That's the
an
way the
insurance
folks
company.
were. And so as I got into more the senior roles, and mainly I got on the radar screen for two main reasons. One was I always got it done. And the other was, which I did not learn until later, but it's just a natural part of me, is, as people say, I was coachable,
Mm.
right? So I got to a point at Chubb Insurance Company, I rose through the ranks and got to become a divisional CIO. And the global CIO role came up, right? And I took a first shot at it, didn't get it. They didn't think I was ready or anyone was ready. They brought someone from the outside specifically to raise the next CIO for Chubb, up their leadership skills. So I was let's say I was part of a 2.5-year interview and beauty contest, right? And I learned a lot about myself and about leadership, but it was about, at the end of the day, and we could talk more about this as we go on, what I learned is it's less about me competing with somebody else. It was about me being the best I could be, and not to be distracted by the competition. And it took me a little bit to get there, but I got there. And then once I had that mindset, I became very coachable, because I knew I took it like a sponge. Fast forward, I got the job after the 2.5-year beauty contest. And I remember talking to my predecessor at the time. So what made the difference for me? Because the competition, there were very smart people at Chubb, and others easily could have got this job. And she said, I got it done. I had advocates. But most importantly, in terms of competition, I was coachable. And they knew that if I had a challenge, they can work with me to kind of take me to the next level. So, and then I just, I was in that role for 9 years, did a lot of IT transformation, really did a lot of good projects. Of course, we had the typical IT hiccups. It's important how you handle them. And then they got acquired, and here I am.
Yeah, and amazingly, you got promoted from within. I can't tell you the number of companies that you see going out and saying, we need to get somebody from the outside. And part of it is, I think that, they know, because you're on the inside, what are the kind of the flaws and things you need to work on that you have.
Exactly.
And all of the external candidates just look so perfect on these resumes.
That's so true.
And it's the allure of finding this, incredibly perfect person that doesn't really exist. And you must have been very coachable, because in most instances, they really do turn to the outside, especially when it's been a long timer.
Yep.
So congrats and kudos to you. You pulled it off.
Thank you. Thank you. It was work. And Chubb, I have to, appreciate the type of company Chubb was to have that on their radar screen. From a governance point of view, of course, they have to look outside too, right?
Yeah, they do.
But, they stuck to what the original idea was, is, we know we have talent here. So let's just, groom them all. And I had throughout the process, they actually provided an executive coach that worked with all of us, right? And but I took it my mission that I'm going to win no matter what. I don't mean I'm going to win and get the job no matter what, which is certainly, I do have a competitive side to me. But it is as much as I'm going to be much better at the end of this regardless, by learning and doing, and really sponging it all in. And it worked. I mean, honestly, and what I was honestly most proud of course, getting the job was a feel-good thing. The transition from my predecessor to me was absolutely seamless.
Wow.
There was no hiccups. Matter of fact, they told me about it in December of 07. I was to take it over March 1st. By January, I think 15th, my predecessor was, you got this.
Hmm.
I'm going to go help them with some other expense cutting mission things they want me to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
So
fantastic. What a great feeling. And I think the takeaway for the audience here, for those people who want to do better at anything, it doesn't mean they're going to, their target is to be the CEO or their top leader somewhere. It could be
mm,
anything.
that's
The
right. That's right.
reality is you said, I'm going to be coachable. And what does that mean to the average person who, you know, maybe isn't a sponge? What in fact did you do that maybe they should do? What's the
That's a
takeaway?
great question. I noticed it, I learned it myself, but I also noticed in other people that, you don't know it all. There's no way, right? And, this person, her name is June Drury, many might know her. She was my predecessor, but also a gentleman I worked with at Chubb for 15 of the 20 years I was there in one way, shape, or form, reported to him for a lot of the time. On the business side, Dino Robusto, he now runs CNA Insurance Company. He also was brilliant in terms of, in a different way. June had her way, Dino had his way. And just, I recognized the talent in both of them and many other people. And I recognize, and it requires some humility,
Yeah,
right? And I have an ego like anybody else, and some will say maybe bigger than most people,
yeah,
uh, right? In a fun way. But um, I realize that these people know stuff,
yes,
and it's also, I'm a person that likes to get along with people, and I think relationships are important. Taking people's advice and asking their advice is actually a compliment to them, and they actually, most people want to help people.
yeah.
And if you let your ego get in the way, which being uncoachable, many times I believe is the ego getting in the way,
I think
right?
so too.
So I think be open to anything. And, I recognize I don't know it all at all, right? And that take the advice, but do something with it. The advice that makes sense. And that's what I did. And I just did it naturally as I grew through this process. When June had told me that that was one of the things that really shined a light on me, amongst other
Yeah,
things, but the other people, like I said, had many, many good qualities. Um, it was an aha moment for me that, wow, that was more important than I thought. I was doing it for me,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because I was gonna take everything out of this I could, right? Whether I got it or not. So it's really about being open-minded and just being a sponge,
yeah.
right?
You
Like
did, you
take
did super.
and it's a level of vulnerability to that, right?
Mhm.
Because there are some people, and my recognition of what one or two people were doing in that same contest or other times was, if they put it out there for advice, they're also putting out that I don't know,
Yeah,
and to them that was vulnerability they just didn't want to put out there,
yep,
and I totally disagree with that. I think it's even when you make a mistake, right, where you don't know something.
yeah.
Early in my career, I would try to fib my way through it. Now, was perfectly okay. I learned, say, you know what? I don't know that. Let me get back to you.
It's
And
so
that,
interesting that the really many of the really great leaders, and this has been studied,
mhm.
um, they've just they're vulnerable and they have an affinity for the
Yep,
human side of business.
yep,
And
exactly.
Jim Collins wrote a book, Level 5 Leadership, years ago. There's a great Harvard
Hmm.
Business Review paper on it. I read it in the 90s. It absolutely resonated with me. And the Level 5 leader was this highly vulnerable leader. The ones who, even when they knew something, said, I don't know. What should we do?
Right.
And people rallied around,
Hmm.
wanted to help. Immediately, they could contribute and feel needed. They were motivated, and all these different parts of the human psyche came into play, and they built these great companies. What made you so interested in the human side of leadership? Did you have an epiphany? Did you just naturally gravitate to that? What happened?
Um, Probably more natural gravitation, but there were moments of epiphanies, let's call it,
Yeah,
right? And like I mentioned earlier, when I got into project management, and I knew, and I was a very methodical project manager. I had project plans to the nth degree, and my attitude always failure is not an option. We're going to do everything. If it didn't work, we could truly say no stone went unturned to make it work,
yeah,
right? So that required a lot of planning. And, I don't enjoy planning, but it was a necessary part of the world I was in because I did not want to fail.
Yeah.
And as I was doing that, I realized, or started to realize through the process, it's all about the people. It's
Yep.
not about the technology you have, or it's not about the money they're going to give you in capital investment. It's about, if you want to be most productive, it's about the people. Then I kind of evolved to, it's easy to get their hands. That's what the paycheck's all about, right?
Yeah.
It's not as easy to get their head in their heart, especially their heart. You want their enthusiasm. So, and that's, by the way, where a lot of leadership comes in. But I definitely learned that it's all about the people. And I don't only mean, you know, there's a carrot and stick side of leadership, right? When
Yes.
people are doing well, let them know it, right? And treat them well. But accountability is important, right? And you have to hold people accountable. And that's another side of the human factor that you have to put in there, that, we're all here for a reason. We all have our goals. We want to be as unified in those goals as possible. But if you're not measuring up, determine if it's a training issue, is it a capability issue, is it a character issue, and deal with it appropriately. Sometimes it's training, sometimes it's wrong role, wrong person, change
Yeah.
the role. Sometimes, you just don't fit. And that just sends a message to the rest of the team that they're as much valued because we're not letting someone drag us down,
Yes.
right?
Super
Or
important.
will you invest in the human side of them and make them better, or give them a different role? So to your question, um, you know, I know this is so overused phrase or cliche, as people are the biggest asset.
Yeah.
It's one, even with all the technology that's out these days that can replace people in manufacturing and some artificial intelligence knowledge work, it's still about the people.
Yeah. 100%. Because as you automate these manual repetitive things away, or you get
Hmm.
3D printing to replace
Hmm.
what some of the people were doing before, those weren't very human activities, actually.
Exactly.
They were
Exactly.
repetitive. It's
Hmm.
not what we were designed to
Hmm.
do here. So,
Exactly.
fascinating. Along the way, you discovered this, you mentioned it earlier, that people are different, this human
Hmm.
complexity, as some people have called it.
Right.
And you had to be high EQ enough to adapt to these
Hmm.
different personalities. Any thoughts on that? I mean, that's a broad
Yeah,
question.
that's very important. And I'd be lying to say I'm not still a student of that, because I think you could never stop learning about that part of the human dynamics and how we're all
Yeah.
different. I'm a certified Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
I'm certified Myers-Briggs assessments, put it that way. And it heightened my awareness of how different we are, and that we all have a different, let's go, as Myers-Briggs would call, preferences, right?
Yes.
And that you know the trick of the trade is to understand the people at almost an individual level and customize your approach based on that person. And like I said, I'm still a student in that. I think over the years I've gotten better and better at it, but I don't think you're ever great at it. Like if someone's an introvert versus an extrovert, you know,
Yeah.
there's different ways to get the most out of them in a way that they appreciate, not the way you want to do it, right? So, and then even what you take, that's who they are and their preferences, but then you're going to bring into the mix, where are they in life? Are there other things in their way? Life on the life side of the world, or
Yeah.
some stressors. And there is a very human side. It's one of the things else I loved about Chubb Insurance Company is they cared about the people, right? And they would be considerate of things like that.
Mm.
And it just, I couldn't stress more that people are very different. The more we each leader can understand, the needs of that given person, and you get them maximize what they contribute in a way that they enjoy doing it,
Yeah.
you won the game. You absolutely won the game.
Yeah, you won the game. And I
Mhm.
I would second the whole notion of these insurance companies having somewhat of a more caring attitude about
Mhm.
people, because they got this long-term vision of things and where they're going, and realize there's some ups and downs along the way. And I found it easier to be more human in these places, that it wasn't all about every number and people were an expense. They were more of an asset, just
Exactly.
better, a little bit healthier environment. So, um, that brought you, obviously tons of learnings along the way. And I
Mhm.
know, you got involved in that Society for Information Management,
Mhm.
global organization, a very big one, in their leadership program, which is for those people who don't know anything about it, it's a very, very well-known program. It's intense. It's called RLF, this, regional leadership forum, I think it is, right?
Yes.
Tell just a little bit about that for everybody. What is it? How does it work? And then maybe we can get into some of the different things that you've been teaching people along the way.
Sure. Yeah. So RLF, SIMS RLF, Society for Information Management's leadership program, um, is about authentic leadership, and it's pretty intense. It's 9 months. It transpires over 9 months. You meet 6 times for 2 days each time. You read many books, up to 30 books. You do book reports on them. And really, it's about to make the leader as authentic as possible, to be as self-aware as possible, and just like really feel good about the leader, who they are, right? And at Chubb, my predecessor, and then June, and my own efforts, we put at least 250 people through the program.
Mm,
And
exactly.
just a quick story about a quick example. There were a few people, do I really want to go to this? But they were feeling the peer pressure because others were going, and I wouldn't force anybody, but I was pushing them. And this one person was pretty like, I don't want to do this. It's too much time. I have too much to do. But she came around. And after the second of the 6 sessions, I remember she came in, she was a direct report. We're having a one-on-one. And she said, Jim, I get it. This is going to be a life-changing experience. And you would not believe how many people have said that, right? What I love about the program, and I'm running it for SIM. I own the whole thing nationwide.
Yeah.
And I actually run one of the forum, the executive version of RLF, which is a more advanced version. And what I like about it is it literally does that. You get to know you as a leader. They're all, how do you delegate? How do you keep people accountable? All great stuff. That's not what this is about. It's about really your style and how to be most effective with your style. Executive RLF takes it the next step, more about business savvy, more about politics, more about relationships and networking. RLF touches some of that, you don't have to be an IT person to go. It just happens to be part of an IT organization. And we have, how many forums? I think 10 forums across the United States. And we put about 250, 300 people through it a year.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember along the way taking a look at the book list. This was years ago, and saying, wow, that is a really, really high quality reading list. And self-awareness is, wow, I mean, that's so important. Let's talk about that for a minute,
Sure.
because how do you think people grew self-awareness? Everybody could be more self-aware. And what could we share with people here today who are listening in on maybe growing their own? What'd you take away?
I would say, it's self-awareness. So let's use a little bit of a, let's say, metaphor. We're all our own little computer, right?
Yep.
And we have a CPU that has an operating system. And anyone suggests their operating system is flawless or bug-free, clearly isn't self-aware, right? So if you really want to be the best you can be, my opinion is you need to be self-aware. And there's a certain amount of humility that goes with that, and vulnerability, where, if you could really be self-aware, understand what works for you and what doesn't, and be okay with it, and then work at it versus it being, something that brings you down, you can't help but be better. It's almost like intentionality. It's gonna happen once you recognize, hey, I'd say for myself, I'm not the greatest public speaker, as an example, right? I recognize that, and incrementally, I get better and better. I'm not going to be a charismatic, politician or anything like that, but I'm getting better and better at effectively speaking, as an example. But I had to become self-aware that there were a few challenges in my head that held me back, right? But also, self-awareness isn't only about understanding where you can improve yourself. It's also about, hey, someone can say, I'm pretty darn good at this. And what I noticed a lot too is people who are just naturally good at something don't recognize or appreciate it because they've always been that way. It's not a muscle they grew, and it takes others like RLF to make them aware of, and there's one person who I know very well who has such an engaging personality and knows what to say, when to say it, and how to say it. And it's probably been that way since they're 5 years old,
Yep.
and doesn't recognize the talent, how talented they are in that realm. And now they've kind of learned to, it being pointed out to them in different ways and kind of mirrored back to them. Maybe, maybe I have something special here. And
Mhm.
now I'm going to use that to my advantage. I'll give you an example of myself, which I never realized. I've heard it more than once in feedback to me along the way, is that some would suggest I have a very unassuming approach,
Mhm.
right? And that unassuming approach, actually, in one way, you could also parenthetically say, maybe I don't market myself as much as I could. So that's
Mhm.
maybe not that's a side that could be improved. But the other side is that
It's
steady as you go, and
Yep.
I just make things happen without as many distractions.
Yeah. And when we talk about self-awareness and you talk about people growing it,
Hmm.
a big part of that then is, I guess, them becoming more thoughtful about who they are, but also being open to feedback. What do you see happen in RLF, and what could
Hmm.
people do in life to become more self-aware? What worked for some of the people who went through this program? There's so many going through. What did they?
Yeah, so a couple of things I do on RLF, right, is you tell your personal story, right? And usually the first couple of people, they're a little tentative, but it gets deep. And partly what works and resonates with people is they start to hear, oh, he or she suffers with that too, or is challenged by that too,
Yeah.
or whatever. And you start to understand that you're not alone. You all, let's call them demons or gremlins, right? That we may have in a way of thinking, which we all have in one shape or form. That you start to realize, well, wait a minute, they got that too, right? Now we're all human, we're all in this together, right? And that now sets the stage for you to let down your guard and be more vulnerable and open to, really, really exploring yourself and upgrading your skills, your soft skills, your core skills, let's call them. That works very well, but it also you start to build a bond with everybody. There's
Yeah.
usually anywhere from 25 to 30, maybe even 30 plus people in a given forum. You do not leave that without a bond with most of them. Be it you're a quiet person or a more gregarious person,
Yep.
doesn't matter. You're going to bond with people. And if you really talk about the human experience, connection's important to us, right? So you're
Yeah.
leaving with connection and trusted partnerships or relationships that now become part of your network. You can pick up a phone and call them and say, hey, Frank, I'm just having a rough day. Can we just chat?
Struggling
Right?
with this, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. It could be work-wise. It could be,
Yeah.
in a challenge you have personally. So there's that, creating a world where it's okay to be vulnerable, building that network, but also giving you tools and perspective. A lot of the books give perspective, right, on
Mm.
ways to look at the world and open up, your thinking in terms of there are other ways. And it's highly effective. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I listen, that trust bond that people are building obviously allows them to be more open with others and get
Mhm.
the feedback that's required. And,
Mhm.
self-awareness is something you've got to pursue. And I
Right.
do think that, people have to be vulnerable and say, hey,
Mhm.
what do I need to do better? What
Right.
do you think? And people will help them. And I love this whole notion of self-awareness because this is going to be really important. And I meant to ask you, why do you think that this human dimension is so important at this moment in time?
Another great question. This, I can answer in so many different ways. One way that I realize or think about is, technology is really, really taking a big place in our world, right? And in
Yeah,
many cases, replacing the human element, right?
yeah,
So, and some, in many cases, a cool thing, right? Because we meaning the knowledge type worker can go on and do more. There's also more the hands-on type folks can do more too. But it doesn't work. Technology, no matter what, is a prosthetic to a human. It
hmm,
can't totally replace us. But
prosthetic.
the
I
human,
like that.
the human becomes more important in the process, right? Because now we're relying more and more on that human in that one interaction, if you would, if it's with a customer or if it's with, peers. And strictly from an opinion point of view, I think, technology is creating a situation where we're not all feeling as connected as we could,
Hmm.
right?
I
And
agree.
that's a human need. It's a factual human need from a spiritual and emotional level. You need connection. Is where humans are hurting. HERDING. We herd, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're all about. And if we're taking that away and isolating, not a good thing. So as a leader, if you really want a leader of people or a leader in the industry, your customer, if you could connect with them and get the most out of them in a way that they want to be part of it, right? The company wins, or your job, you win, or whatever you want to, whatever box you want to put that in. But you're actually helping that person connect more to life in general.
Hmm.
And then so it's up to us as leaders to find ways to capitalize on that. But the human element becomes more and more important, I think, firstly, as technology gets more and more of a
Pervasive, right?
pervasive, it's more important that the human involvement gets more and more critical.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we're seeing everywhere. As companies struggle to throw off this industrial mindset where humans will
Mm,
dispense
mm,
sometimes a necessary evil in an environment where these large, these equipments, factories filled with capital equipment had to be
mhm,
made to run right. And it was those investments that matter, not the people. We see the
mm,
exact opposite, right? The cost of the infrastructure goes down and down and down and down and down, and the cost of the people goes up. They create all of the, services and digital things for this era where it's so important
mhm,
that it's an exciting time for people to begin to really, perfect this human dimension, which is why I was excited to have you on because you're just so
mm.
good at it.
Thank you, thank you. And
You
it
really
is
are.
important. It's actually why I got into coaching.
Yeah.
Because I think anybody, we're not working at full capacity. I don't mean work, but we're not, let's say, living at full capacity,
Yeah.
right? And a coach, as an example, and this is, like I said, why I got into it. Even if it brings clarity to a person,
Yeah.
right? And you talk about vulnerability. A coaching relationship, you could be very vulnerable. That's part of the game, right? I think it needs to be more than just in a coaching relationship, but just let's take that as an example, right? And I've had people share with me things, deep, deep stuff
Mm.
that just by reframing it and helping them change perspective, it opened up a whole new world for them.
Yeah.
Right. So anything that helps with self-awareness, it could be a best friend too. It doesn't have to be a coach. It could be, if you have a relationship like that with your boss or someone at work, anyone where you can just kind of help you be self-aware, but also help reframe things to give you perspective.
Yeah.
Right. A good leader will set up an environment where that happens automatically.
Yeah. Super important. Um, the growth of self-awareness is incredibly important. And,
Mm,
certainly in this era, we're going to see that self-aware leaders who are vulnerable are going to be the ones that
right.
actually are able to get the best
Mm,
out of people by creating
mhm.
where they
No
give it.
doubt.
Yeah, because you can't take the best from anybody. They have
And
to
that's
willingly
statistically proven, by
give
the
it.
way.
Yeah, I haven't read that study, but I'm sure it
Oh,
is.
no, a number of studies out that talk about, employee engagement, which let's
That,
assume
yeah,
under that umbrella is content employees, which
yeah,
you have to believe there are, the better the company does.
you're right. You're right. The deeply
Mhm.
engaged ones runs just so
Right.
much
Yeah.
better. It's amazing. But I have to I have to say there's other factors, and I know you've dug into them many, many times. A lot of people talk about agility and resilience,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about, hey, we're going to use an agile process
Hmm.
like Scrum, and that's going
Right.
to be the end of the story, and suddenly we're agile. But in fact, you've got to have an agile human infrastructure, and I know you got into that during
Hmm.
your years in leadership because obviously you accomplished that and it's also some of the things that you teach and coach people on. Maybe,
Yes.
what do you think at this moment?
No,
In
I
time,
think
super
actually
important.
both those are quite important. Let's talk agility first. If you want to use a little metaphor, you want to be an aircraft carrier or a PT boat, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'd rather have a team of 10 PT boats than one big aircraft carrier. where we could move in unison together, or if one of us have to kind of move a little different direction for the better of the team, that's a wonderful thing. And they're just, PT people is much more agile than a carrier.
Yeah.
Clearly, a carrier has its importance, but the world is moving too fast, especially in the technology realm, right? I mean, can an accountant, I think I know this, can an accountant say, okay, I got my CPA, other than keeping on the latest rules and regs, I'm there, right? An IT professional can't do that, right? We always have to be on
Right.
top of things, right?
Oh,
And there's new
constantly.
technologies, but the new technologies are not completely, but often changing the world we live in, the world we work in, and how we approach work, right? So that's where resilience comes in. So you need to be agile to keep up with it and to be as most productive. But resilience comes in because it's always changing. And, to kind of always be in a position to kind of be able to work through it and come out on top and exploit it. Anything new that's coming, you're in a better position to have a greater impact. And that there's a lot of EQ involved in that,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of competency involved in that. But if you want to be, kind of continue in your career and grow, those are definitely two areas to focus on.
Yeah, for sure. People have to be able to stop and reflect and not react, because
Right.
things are changing really, really quickly. And that whole ability to stop and reflect is just vitally important, as is, courage, right?
Oh, courage is key. There was a saying I don't know where I heard it. I know it's not an original, but no risk, no risk, no reward.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I've heard it.
And you play it safe. All right. You may coast through life, but if you're real, you gotta, smart risk, if you want to call it that, educated risk, or higher risk with mitigation strategies in case something
Yeah.
goes wrong, is how I approach life. And it's paid off. And I think you need courage. You need to put yourself out there. We talked about vulnerability a couple of times. Being vulnerable is being courageous,
Yeah.
right?
It
And
is a
then
risk.
courage itself to really, I'll just give a very, very quick story. We were at Chubb, we were looking to centralize IT from a federated model, right? And I put a lot of work went into it, to plan it, to design it. I remember talking to the CFO to introduce the idea to him because I was trying to get everyone lined up. And, it was a few at the leadership level, at his level, there was a little contest, their own beauty contest, who's going to be next CEO of Chubb,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't report to him, I reported to this gentleman, Dino, I mentioned earlier. And he looked at me when I shared with him what I wanted to do. And he says, Jim, the target's going to be completely on your back now, right?
Right.
And I turned around and
Taking potential away, right?
I said, listen, it's the right thing to do. We need to do this. Now, there was a side to him, to be honest with you, we were saving the company some money. So the other side of his CFO hat, he was very happy.
Yeah.
But I knew the spotlight would be on me. If this thing failed, I'd be out selling pencils,
You
right?
bet. You bet.
Because
People love
they're not going to,
control, right? I have my own
right.
data center. I can get stuff done. I don't have to deal with this bureaucracy. Humans want control. And yeah,
Yeah.
to take that away, wow,
Yeah.
that's a tough message.
And it thankfully it worked, right? But I could have easily not pursued that.
Yeah.
Right. I felt there was a calling for it to happen, right? But I went to my boss to sell the idea. And his courage he was phenomenal in terms of supporting me the whole way through. But I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew we had to do it. You get to my leadership style. You asked me early on, there's always three things that I kind of look at as a leader: do the right thing, do it the right way, mitigate risk,
Yeah.
or mitigate uncertainty, I
Great
guess,
formula.
right? And that was the right thing to do,
Mhm.
right? And I mitigated risk by
Without a
planning it
doubt.
out, having the right people, so on and so forth.
History says you absolutely did the right thing. Companies that didn't do it struggle with more overhead, harder migration to the cloud,
Exactly.
everything. Centralizing that, wow,
Mm-hmm.
what absolutely the right call,
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt. Encourage, we're in an era where people do have to start reinventing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Not all, but many. And that takes courage too, because it's
Oh,
comfortable.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's very comfortable to just say, hey, I'm going to ride the wave and I'm going to do what I'm doing and I'm going to just continue to get paid for this and ride in the sunset. And unfortunately,
Hmm.
the world may not work that way for you, right? So
Right.
people should be getting ahead of the curve. I love this whole notion of courage.
Well,
And it's
even in that
great.
regard, there's a when I give people advice about that, and a career in general, I often use the comparison to a corporation, right? And each
Mhm.
corporation, a public corporation, has a stock price,
Yeah.
and the stock price is a reflection of future potential. And you apply it to yourself. You want your stock price to be as high as possible. So, what do you have to do to make sure, let's say a different word, you're as marketable as possible?
Hmm.
Right? And I feel if you look through that lens, like what is going to make me, I mean, specifically talking about career, what's going to make me as marketable as possible? If you're a COBOL programmer and it stayed that way, there's still work for you, but you're not going anywhere beyond where you are. But if you read the tea leaves a little bit and followed technology's progression, or, you know, if you wanted to become an IT leader, you read the tea leaves and said, okay, it's less about technology, it's more about the stuff we're talking about here, leadership, things like that. So, but that all takes courage, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to leave, let's say, for example, I'm going to leave my COBOL world. I mean, I'm kind of self-reflecting a little bit here myself, and I'm going to get out of technology into project management, right? I knew if I stayed with COBOL, I'd be more secure. I
Sure.
put your project manager, putting yourself out there. If it works, great. If it doesn't work,
Yeah.
you got a couple of, visibility is a double-edged sword, put it that way.
It really is. It really
Right.
is.
So I so agree with you on courage.
Yeah. So, listen, you've had an incredible leadership journey. And I think, your story and the things that really
Mm-hmm.
matter that you've learned along the way have just been so important.
Mm-hmm.
Where could people find your company?
Oh, it's the name of it's Night Insights,
Mhm.
and www.jnightinsights.com.
And I'll put it in the bottom of the video, of
Oh,
course.
great, great.
Put the
And
link there.
I kind of has three facets. I do IT management consulting,
Mhm.
empowerment coaching in general, which includes leadership development, and then leadership development and team building is associated with that. And business has been good, and I'm enjoying it. And much like I didn't mention this earlier, much all the RLF facilitators, most of them, if not all of them, are semi-retired.
Mhm.
And like me, they're there because they want to be there. They're not there for the money. Trust me,
Yeah.
it's not. It's more of a cause than it is a job.
Yeah.
And what I love about every facilitator, and part of my world last year was I visited a lot of forums and spent time with them as I was getting ready to take over the whole program. And the commitment these folks have to truly the mission of RLF, because like I said, it's a cause for them. It's
Yeah.
not, okay, I'm going to make X amount of money. I'm going to get my paycheck in 2 weeks. Thank God I can pay my mortgage. That's not where they're at,
Yeah.
right? And it's just phenomenal. And that's kind of where I'm at too. And that's why I got into the world of coaching and consulting and leadership development. I enjoy it. It's a passion. And I think the need is out there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you were a great leader and your track record
Thank you.
proved it. And obviously you built great teams, so you're a great coach. And, I fully encourage anybody looking for somebody to help them on the IT leadership side in their company to reach out to Jim, because he is the real deal. I've known him. He's a great guy. And I think absolutely without a doubt, look him up. The link will be in the bottom here and you can find him. And Jim, I'd like to thank you for coming on. I think
Thanks for having me.
this was really, really good. We'll have to have you back.
Happy to do it.
And, thanks so much.
You
Appreciate it.
bet. Take care,
Take care,
Frank.
buddy. Bye.